This is how they celebrate in Ireland, and tomorrow it will come to the entrance. The focal point of the Australian Celtic Festival will be here in Memorial Park, where there's a host of games and entertainment.
From the response so far, it's got quite large. We planned an open air concert, and it's got into a 2-day thing. We have some 600 performers taking part, so you can imagine the response we have there.
Organiser Liam Daly of the Central Coast Irish Athletic Club says it's important for the Celtic community to get together, and he expects visitors from throughout the country. The festival will begin tomorrow night with a ball. On Saturday and Sunday there'll be buskers and stalls throughout the streets, entertainment in the park, hurling demonstrations, tug-of-wars and of course a drop of the traditional ale.
We'll have an Irish bar here selling Guinness.
Helen O'Neill makes a living from helping people improve their fitness. Now the former Australian junior badminton champion has been asked to help get Newcastle League side Souths shipshape for next season. Excited by the opportunity, Helen is also realistic about the sideward glances she may receive in the male-dominated sport.
That's going to be the hardest thing, Kath. So many people have said to me, oh, you're in for a caning now and things like that. But I think anybody, particularly a woman moving into male territory, you establish respect through your credibility.
And that's something the Newcastle-based fitness consultant aims to establish right from the start. The Souths League side will line up early next month for a fitness test to get them in the right frame of mind over what's traditionally the silly season.
By testing them in December and then setting them some goals to achieve over the Christmas New Year period, we're not saying go away and have an awful Christmas, just train hard, but simply saying, that take a more professional approach to it.
Souths coach Richard Jones believes Helen will give things a new image and hopefully help the club better last season's 5th placing. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Before Kooragang Island was reclaimed, it consisted of 5 separate islands. Now the western side of the island is set to return to its beginnings when the Department of Fisheries rehabilitates 200 hectares of the land. Salt marsh and mangroves will be recreated, allowing Department of Fisheries officers to undertake valuable research.
We don't know in many instances how these systems function, and also we need to rehabilitate and create wetlands elsewhere in the state where we've made mistakes in the past, and we don't know how to do that. And part of the aim of this project is to give us that information so we can go away and do that work.
What is unique about this land is that it lies just a kilometre away from Newcastle's heavy industry, but when the project is complete, it will provide a wetland haven similar to the Shortland Wetland Centre. It might seem like a curious mix, but beside the wetland areas and the fish habitats, there'll also be a city farm.
We'd like to advertise things like permaculture, sustainable agriculture, aquaculture, all the different aspects of farming.
These old World War II radar bunkers on the site will become the educational hub of the project, with the island's history on display. In launching the $5 million project today, Minister Ian Causley highlighted the project's significance.
There's no doubt the area is important for some of the wading birds that come down from Asia down through here. So there's no doubt that people around the world will be watching this project.
It was an occasion of great pomp and ceremony, but also of sadness, as Group Captain Alan Tithridge faced his complement for the last time. Group Captain Tithridge has spent 3 years at the base. He's moving on to Australian Defence Force headquarters, where he will be promoted to Air Commodore. Group Captain Tithridge signed over his command to Group Captain John Kindler, who comes from the Department of Defence in Canberra. Like the man he is replacing, he has a long association with fighter aircraft.
Winners are grinners, and in Curry today they were aplenty during a parade through the town for this year's Rugby League premiers. It was 48 years between premierships for the Bulldogs, appropriately seated opposite this year's winners, several members of the Bulldogs' 1940 and 45 grand final teams. Also putting in an appearance, Curry-born Knights international Paul Harrigan. But the other local lad holding most people's attention was former Australian Rugby League captain John Sattler. Having driven from his home on the Gold Coast for the ceremony, the visit provided an opportunity for Sattler to recall how he got started in the game.
A really good friend of mine from here, whose two sons play, Williams boys that play in the first grade team. Their dad, Alan, one year when I was about 16 and a half or something, I was breaking a young horse and I went past the football ground and he sort of said, come and have a game of touch, which I did. And so he was responsible for getting me there in the initial part of it.
Cessnock Mayor Marie Callaghan then formally honoured each Bulldog player with a commemorative medallion. Mrs Callaghan and captain coach Steve Linane then unveiled a special grand final plaque. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Playing on home turf, the Breakers had the most scoring chances early in the first half, striker David Lowe giving this cross from Graham Jennings a little too much air. Morwell ventured into the box on several occasions, this header by their striker John Markovski in the 13th minute causing Breakers keeper Clint Gosling the most despair. Into the second half and the challenges at times became physical. 20 minutes in and Warren Spink set up a cross, but with no one to finish, Morwell's keeper claimed control. David Lowe then went on the attack again, powering in 2 goal attempts in the space of 10 minutes. While Morwell dedicated most of its energy to defence in the dying minutes, Newcastle continued applying the pressure, replacement Troy Halpin testing the agility of Morwell keeper Stephen Mortone. Despite Newcastle's late charge, the game finished in a 0-0 draw. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. It was a disappointing crowd of around 1,500 attracted for the Yanks Down Under bout. In the second last fight of the night, Australian junior welterweight champion Shannon Taylor was up against highly rated American Lewis Masonette. The Wollongong boxer, in only his 5th professional fight, went blow for blow with Masonette. In the 7th round, Taylor laid in some lead-weighted punches. This form saw him dominate the last 4 of the 10-round fight and take victory in a unanimous decision. Countryman Spike Chaney, the reigning Australian and world boxing welterweight champion, then took centre ring against American Tom Alexander. A very fit-looking Chaney dominated from the start. A left hook in the first round sent Alexander reeling. Chaney continued this bombardment, with Alexander bleeding from a cut eye and nose at the end of the 7th. The fight was stopped, with Chaney declared the winner. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It had all the ingredients needed to make a great party. Plenty of dancing, plenty to do, and of course plenty to eat. Christmas parties at Kingfisher Park have been an annual event for more than 10 years. The money raised from festivities going to Ronald McDonald House and children in Sydney's Prince of Wales Hospital. Along with Santa, star of Paradise Beach, John Bennett made a special appearance.
I really enjoy getting together with the kids and doing things like this. You know, it seems to make them happy. It makes me happier.
120 bowlers from Lismore, Tamworth and Coffs Harbour made the trip to Port Macquarie for the annual bowling tournament. Host club Port Macquarie made a strong impression early, ahead by 60 points at the end of the first day of play. Aiming to win their second title in as many years, they continued their form this morning, leading by another 14 points at lunchtime. Scores are worked out by each bowler's average and teams were made up of both men and women. Port Macquarie finished on 338 points, followed by Tamworth, Lismore and Coffs Harbour.
The new building houses classrooms for business and computer students. It also has a bookshop, a cafeteria and a spacious library with wheelchair access for the disabled. Education Minister Virginia Chadwick named the building the Merv Watson Wing after the former Hunter Regional Director and Principal of this college. He went on to become Director General of TAFE in New South Wales. The honour was suggested by many of his former colleagues. A portrait of him will hang in the building. Earlier, the Minister opened Stage 2 of Maryland Public School. Newcastle City Council provided $60,000 to enlarge the hall. As well as being used by the school, it can also be hired by the Maryland community.
that interpretation. The idea of tourism began simply because it suddenly occurred to me for most of my that one can't look at it except by having a whole show. Be around necessary to tell them about how they can think about a little bit more once they're in streets. It was the point I had on it to make this.
The 4,100-tonne frigate is the sixth built for the Royal Australian Navy. It left Melbourne today and will stop in Sydney before heading on to Newcastle. Guided missile frigates are the frontline ships protecting Australia from air and submarine attacks during wartime. Part of the hull was built in Newcastle. The components were transported to Williamstown in Melbourne for assembly. The frigate Newcastle was launched by the Lady Mayoress Margaret McNaughton in Melbourne last year. Next Wednesday, the frigate will berth here at Newcastle's No. 5 Lee Wharf. The commissioning, which will see the ship become an official part of the fleet, will take place the following Saturday, December the 11th. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
For the last 8 years, Mick Crampton's Quarrabelong house has been home to the Coalfields Boxing and Drug Awareness Team.
Well, I was concerned about the amount of kids that were running the streets, and obviously we're at a dead end, and I thought it was just another way of giving them something to do and to talk to them on a sort of one-off basis about drugs.
Mick has worked with hundreds of young people, both male and female, aged between 6 and 30. For 13-year-old Casey Wilson, Mick's provided an alternative.
I came out here to learn boxing and that, and my older sister, she's a bit into drugs and that, and I didn't like drugs and that, so I tried to get out of it and go somewhere else to get away from home.
To Mick, if his students become champion boxers, that's a bonus. His emphasis is on developing discipline through training, having a healthy outlook on life and avoiding drugs. One student who's benefited from this philosophy and is showing talent in the ring is Mick's 17-year-old son Jamie. In only his fourth senior fight, Jamie won the Australian Junior Welterweight title at the National Amateur Championships 10 days ago. Jamie's boxing title pleased Mick, but what made him the proudest was Jamie being awarded the trophy for Best Sportsman in and outside the ring at the championships. Mick believes it's qualities like playing fair that will stand Jamie and all his students in good stead later in life. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Fire engulfed the bedsitter flat in Fowler Street, Hamilton South last Wednesday. 33-year-old Harold William Boyle, who was inside at the time, suffered second and third degree burns to 30% of his body. He's now in a satisfactory condition in Sydney's Concord Hospital. Soon after the fire started, 35-year-old Michael Gerard Stofka was arrested in Beaumont Street, Hamilton. He too had been burnt and was taken under police guard to the John Hunter Hospital. Last night, Stofka was finally well enough to be interviewed by police. This morning, the coroner who inquires into fires convened a bedside court hearing. Michael Stofka was charged with maliciously inflicting grievous bodily harm on Harold Boyle and also with maliciously damaging the Hamilton South flat with the intention of injuring Boyle. Michael Stofka, who has burns to his legs, arms and face, showed no emotion when the charges were read out. He just lay quietly listening in his hospital bed. The court heard that Stofka is an invalid pensioner suffering with schizophrenia. He entered no plea and was refused bail. Stofka will be transferred to the hospital in Sydney's Long Bay Jail. A psychiatric assessment has been ordered to determine if he's fit to enter a plea. If well enough, Stofka will appear in Newcastle's local court 4 days before Christmas. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Three weeks ago, James Mullen Developments began clearing the Cams Wharf site without council approval. Council took the matter to the Land and Environment Court, which ordered company chief Greg Moylan to stop work and submit a rehabilitation plan. That plan went to council last night, but it wasn't exactly for rehabilitation. Instead, Mr Moylan submitted a proposal to build a $700,000 stylised garden. After much deliberation, council decided to support the idea. It will, however, also pursue legal action over the unauthorised clearing of the site. Also last night, more discussion on the controversial Green Point land. No firm decision was reached. However, Mayor John Kilpatrick hopes to have a proposal to put to developer McCloy Proprietary Limited early next week. The ALP councillors will meet with company heads on Thursday to discuss their concerns and try to nut out a satisfactory mix of residential housing and parkland. The Mayor said today he believed the issue was close to being resolved. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Sydney's Darling Harbour will be the venue for Australia's inaugural World Trade Fair in February. Steering the ship for the 5-day event is Jeffrey Somerville, the Director of Marketing at the World Trade Centre in Sydney. At a Newcastle businessman's lunch today, Mr Somerville said he believes the fair will provide enormous opportunities for Australian business.
It means that they can start to develop the relationships, the business relationships that are necessary for the ongoing business rather than tomorrow's business.
Mr Somerville recently led an Australian trade fair to the Middle East and says it wasn't just the large city companies which benefited.
One company in particular, which is a company that's, I think the head office is based in Moree, is in the water purification business, and they sold in excess of 400 of their units.
Mr Somerville is encouraging hunter companies to showcase their products to the more than 5,000 international buyers who'll attend the fair.
Looking in particular for Australian technology in scientific and medical area, they're looking at waste management, they're looking at Australian food, both processed and fresh.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
At around 2:30 this afternoon, the elderly couple was trying to turn off busy Hillsborough Road at Charlestown in their small sedan. But crossing onto Waratah Avenue, they collided with an oncoming car, the impact slamming them onto the footpath. The 90-year-old passenger was trapped in his seat with serious chest injuries. Emergency workers used the jaws of life to open the car. Tonight, his condition is described as critical. His wife, the 74-year-old driver, is stable. The driver of the other vehicle suffered shock. And on the Central Coast, traffic chaos in West Gosford this afternoon after a semi-trailer hit the median strip and lost its load onto Brisbane Water Drive off the Pacific Highway. The road was blocked for more than 3 hours while the load of groceries was cleaned up. Fire officers were called as the truck spilt some diesel. The driver was taken to hospital with cuts and bruises. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It's 32 degrees outside, and as if it's not hot enough already, paddlers on Lake St Clair are working up a good sweat. Former surf club coach Graham Evans has two of his brightest prospects doing almost endless circuits as he tries to improve their style. "18-year-old Tomohiro Agata linked up with Graham earlier this year. His father in Japan pays the bills while Tom just trains.
His strength and his fitness was just what they thought was all right, was nothing near our standard. He was struggling to keep up with our third best 16-year-old girl.
On present form, he's on target for a Southeast Asia title and a place in the Japanese Olympic team in 1996. His training partner is 15-year-old South African Julian Bell. Earlier this month, he won the state 5,000 metre title and is determined to make the World Championships in 1995. Unlike most of the other sports academies, Graham doesn't have elaborate training facilities. They just rely on tested routines and a bit of ingenuity.
I started looking at different aerobic conditioning methods and some intensities of training and varied that, and stumbled across a few things that started to work.
Paul Harrigan went behind bars today to support prisoners in Maitland Jail in their fight against AIDS.
Good to see these blokes are aware of it and helping the best they can.
According to the Department of Corrective Services, the percentage of prisoners with HIV in New South Wales jails is no higher than in the general community, less than 1% of the population. And while condoms and clean needles are not supplied, inmates are given education on how to avoid the virus.
We have courses such as HIV peer education course. We have pamphlets which we give out to all inmates, and basically just as much awareness as we can through inmates and staff.
Paul Harrigan's visit is part of an overall approach that everyone, whatever their situation, should be aware of AIDS. At John Hunter Hospital, sections of the AIDS quilt were on display, signifying those lost to the disease. 17 people have died in the Hunter this year. One frightening figure, the increased number of women infected.
People are still saying that they can't get it, like that it's not going to happen to them, and it's time for them to realise that everybody can get it.
Tonight, a special AIDS vigil service will be held at Christchurch Cathedral.
It's been the scene of many a rage in the past, the Wharf Road heritage-listed premises formerly known as Fanny's. The new Sydney owner has since spent $1.3 million to erase those memories of the past and replace them with a new concept that may be the forerunner of a national chain. It's really 4 venues under one roof. A sports bar with treasures like Jeff Fenwick's belt, Alan Border's bat, Mark Richards' surfboard and racing and football memorabilia. On hand for the opening party, the names to go with them among the 1,500 people who squeezed in. There's plenty of American flavour with the Chicago Bar and Grill featuring quick meals like barbecued spare ribs, and a cocktail bar where drinkers will wonder about the jackalope, a conversation piece jackrabbit with antlers. Or is it really a buffalo? While previous similar business ventures there have failed, the new owner is confident this time of the right formula, with the nightclub open Thursday to early Monday morning and the restaurant lunch and dinner 7 days a week.
Is up to the age of 17. The opposition spokesman on Family and Community Services, Ron Dyer, says the rights of some of these children are being violated, held in a room described as the size of a telephone booth or broom cupboard while they wait for a hearing. While our cameras were not allowed inside, other observers say the room is at least 3 times that size.
Staff here at Warramai say the holding room is rarely used, probably on average about once every 2 months. They say offenders are held for a maximum of 2 to 3 hours. The spokesperson for Justice Minister Hannaford says it would appear Mr Dyer has never been to the court. In an angry rebuttal, the spokesperson said what the opposition spokesman is saying is incorrect. It's a slur on the dedicated people that work there. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The civic reception in Maitland Council Chambers this afternoon saw the city's Polish community turn out en masse to welcome their homeland's ambassador to Australia, Dr Agnieszka Morawinska. The occasion saw the guest of honour turn attention to one of the organisers of her visit. Felix Dangle was presented with the Order of Merit, bestowed upon him by President of Poland, Lech Wałęsa. The Maitland Polish Association president was humbled by his honour.
I have never ever expected anything like that. This order belongs not only to me but to everybody that helped me out.
The Order of Merit is a highly regarded honour.
This is a very high Polish distinction.
The newly appointed ambassador concluded her visit to the Hunter, officially opening a photographic exhibition on the Nativity Crib of Krakow at the Polish Millennium Hall. Led by Scottish Pipers, the 2nd 17 Battalion Royal New South Wales Regiment marched through the streets of their hometown this afternoon. While the Army Reservists have a right and privilege to freedom of entry, it's challenged for the ceremonial occasion by police. The highlight of the march was a review at Newcastle City Hall, with senior officers and the Lord Mayor of Newcastle receiving salutes and inspecting the battalions.
It was a frustrating time for players and tournament organisers, with occasional showers delaying play. Women's top seed Rachel McQuillan had to sit out most of the day. Weather permitting, she'll be on the court tonight. The men's number 1 seed John Ireland got into action against David Deep. Ireland progressing through the knockout, winning 6-2, 7-6. Number 2 seed Newcastle's William O'Neill took to the court late this afternoon against Rio Kuharski. That game is still underway. Earlier, Newcastle's star student at the Institute of Sport, Trudy Musgrave, took on Claire Thompson from Sydney. Trudy getting up 6-4, 3-6, 6-2. The players are chasing $3,000 in prize money in the knockout comp. It's hoped all the preliminary games can be out of the way in time for the finals, starting at 1 tomorrow. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
expect. It's certainly not going to be a killer class. We just want anybody could basically come in and do it, except perhaps a beginner who would love to watch him.